The story starts in Isgard. It's a fantasy world of magic and sword resembling the medieval era. The citizens of that world were celebrating and cheering for the army that had returned after slaying the Demon King. But while everyone was cheering for the hero, a man dressed in dark clothing was walking toward the temple. The children who saw him in the streets called him a dark mage, and the people of that world had extreme prejudices toward dark mages. A while later the dark mage arrived at the temple of the divine saint. Then he presented to her the head of the Demon King. It turned out that it was not the hero or the imperial army that slayed the Demon King, but Kim, a dark mage. The saint tried to thank him for all the work he had done behind the scenes, but Kim had enough. He just wanted to go home. Kim was originally a man living in the modern world. He was forcefully summoned into this world and was used like a slave to fight the demons. He was promised to be sent back home in return for his service. And now that he has killed the last threat to Isgard, he asked the saint to keep her promise. The saint warned him that if he wanted to return to his world he must give up his powers, but if he decided to stay and serve the empire, then he would be given whatever he wished. Then he asked the saint to give him Korean fried chicken. The food in that world was disgusting. When the embarrassed saint said they would serve him better food, he told her to bring him a powerful computer so he could play Dungeon Power Fighter. At that point, the saintess gave up and agreed to send him to Earth. She told him to stand in the middle of the summoning circle. But before taking his powers and sending him back, she removed the slave seal on his hand. The slave seal prevents him from disobeying their order and fighting the saint. As soon as she removed the seal, Kim strangled her with his dark magic. He revealed that he had no intention of giving up the power that he worked so hard for. The saintess thought he was a fool because dark magic cannot be used to travel through dimensions. But to her surprise, he proved her wrong. He told her they were stupid for thinking dark and light magic were different, and that it was all the same. After insulting her and calling her a bitch, he left Isgard. On a clear sunny day, in the apartment that he used to live in, Kim returned. He looked around and picked up his smartphone, which he didn't touch in a long time. But there was no internet connection. So, he put on his regular clothes and went out for a walk, but the neighborhood was quiet and he couldn't see anyone. At that point, he was confronted by a wolf monster that should reside in Isgard. Due to the lack of demonic energy in this world, he was incapable of using his dark magic, but he was still strong enough to smash the monster's head in one punch. Then soldiers who were patrolling the area approached him. He was confused as to what happened to Earth while he was gone and cooperated with the soldiers to extract information. The soldiers explained that in the last few years, monsters from another dimension have been invading Earth. The place from whence they invade is called a dungeon. And people with supernatural powers have appeared. The superhumans joined hands with the military to hunt the monsters and wipe them out as soon as they appeared. But recently bigger and stronger monsters have been appearing in civilian areas more frequently. So because of the lack of supernatural people, the military had to declare some civilian areas as inhospitable danger zones. After hearing that, Kim looked at his phone and found out that he had received his enlistment notice and he would have to serve 5 years. He refused to believe that and went to the nearest PC room to confirm the truth. After fulfilling his need to play games and eat fried chicken, he read news articles and realized that everything the soldier said was true, including his enlistment notice. After thinking for a while, he concluded that the only way to enjoy his life in that world was to get rid of the monsters by himself. And to do that, he needed to regain his power by training. Ironically, the fastest way to do that would be to join the military, specifically the Hunter Corps. The next day at the military recruitment gathering, Kim volunteered for the Hunter Corps. He thought that if he joined the Hunter Corps he could clear the majority of dungeons by himself. He could even earn a 10-star military rank in 5 years. This is purely his imagination. In reality, it's impossible. Then the sergeant who would test him arrived. The sergeant asked him to open his stats window and tell him what he saw. A stats window is something all supernatural people see when they awaken. But when Kim opened his stat window it showed an error. When he said that to the sergeant, he was pissed. Later that day, at an important building in the Hunter Corps, is the battalion commander's office. A female recruit by the name of Sun Un-seo was called there by the commander. She was the daughter of General Sun, a high-ranking officer. At first, she thought she was called there for her father's reputation and refused to receive preferential treatment. But it turned out, the battalion commander called her only to give a few words of encouragement. As she was embarrassed about the misunderstanding, the commander informed her of Kim, a recruit who was coming there for a test. When he arrived at the test building, He was amazed to see the facility and wondered how much tax money the government poured into it. The sergeant thought that Kim was a fraud because every year people lie to get into the Hunter Corps. He told him the test was simple and he only had to move the giant red crystal an inch, then he would pass. The crystal was produced from dungeon materials and was extremely heavy, and the average person would find it impossible to move. Kim thought that there might be demonic energy inside the crystal. So instead of moving it, he destroyed it in one punch. The sergeant, the battalion commander, and the female recruit were shocked to see that, as it would take monstrous strength to do that. In the Hunter Corps, the training lasts for 4 weeks. Since they have to participate in real battles immediately after the training period ends. The training programs are hellishly difficult. But for Kim, it was too easy compared to the training he faced in Isgard. The living quarters have real beds, the food they serve is incredible, and after evening there's free time to play. Kim was incredibly happy with the treatment of that place and ran faster in excitement. He finished the run in first place in less than 30 minutes. The instructor was dumbstruck as no one had ever completed it in less than 30 minutes. For this achievement, he was given an outing pass. Later that day in his living quarters he was hanging out with his fellow cadets. When he saw them getting excited over raising their stat by 1, he was shocked. Because in Isgard raising his stat by 10s daily was a given. The cadets were even talking to him normally. In Isgard people never even made eye contact with him because they thought he was bad luck. Then one of the cadets said the PC room was open and Kim rushed there as if his life depended on it. Since he wanted to play games as long as possible, he decided to get 2 hours of sleep. Because when he was in Isgard, it was a luxury to sleep even for 1 hour. 2 hours is considered deep sleep to him. The next 4 weeks passed by in a flash. Kim only slept for 2 hours and played games all night but still came first in every training program. The other cadets were dumbstruck by seeing his stamina. Then the lieutenant arrived to announce that they would go through the dungeon adjustment training. But what is dungeon adjustment training? The majority of dungeons would disappear when you kill the monsters within. But occasionally some dungeons will remain. In that case, it turns into a transforming dungeon that changes its internal structure regularly. It was perfect as a training facility to experience all sorts of environments within the dungeon. The real-life experience in this dungeon was called dungeon adjustment training. The lieutenant created tension within the cadets with that news. Then he offered a carrot. He told them whoever gets first place will get a 2-night, 3-day vacation pass. At that point, everyone became silent, because they already knew who would get first place. The next day, they were called in front of a transforming dungeon. The military brought ferocious wolf monsters and released them into the dungeon. They were only given heavy protective armor and their task was to eliminate a hound as a 4-man team. After entering the dungeon, Kim was more than capable of hunting those hounds by himself, but if he were to do that, the team would not receive any experience. When the hounds attacked them, Kim took the lead and killed a hound instantly. Then he proceeded to instruct his comrades to lure the hounds into a corner and kill it with their numbers. 2 instructors were hiding inside the dungeon to observe them covertly and help if necessary. But they were astounded to see Kim's leadership skills. They joked that he was the Hunter Corps sergeant who returned to the date before his enlistment. The instructors gave Kim the highest score and the rest average scores. After that, they showed themselves and escorted them to the dungeon gate. As they were about to exit, the gate closed and the dungeon transformed. It was a strange phenomenon because there was still a month left before the dungeon should have transformed. The instructors assessed the situation calmly. Once the dungeon closed like that, the probability of outside help was non-existent. The only way out was to hunt all the monsters inside the dungeon. The instructors took the lead to clear the dungeon. But with only 2 instructors and 4 recruits, clearing a dungeon like that was very dangerous. After they had explored the dungeon for a while, suddenly the instructor who was leading them foamed from the mouth and fainted. When the other instructor went to help, he fainted as well. At that point, Kim checked up on them and it turned out they fainted due to coming in contact with demonic energy miasma. He threw the instructors at his comrades and followed the trail of the miasma. Demonic energy was very toxic for humans, to the point that even the warriors of Isgard had to receive a special protection veil from magicians before they fought against demonic beings. That is why the instructor fainted, but to dark mages, demonic energy is equivalent to a charger for a dead phone. So, he was excited as he could finally get some demonic energy. When he arrived at the source, he found the Dark Hound. Although the name was similar, they are overpowering compared to regular hounds. He fought that monster in Isgard when it was about a year into his summoning. The Darkhound jumped at Kim, but he sent it flying with a punch. The fight ended fast and Kim was able to absorb demonic energy after a long time. According to his words, he was about 5% charged. And that is all for now. This video only contains the first 6 chapters. Watch the part 2 video for more. The link is in the description.